At 46, the tragedy of Jason Momoa is beyond heartbreaking, and what you're about to hear may change the way you see him forever. Shocking truths, hidden struggles, and controversies that Hollywood never wanted you to know. If you think you already understand the real Jason Momoa, think again, because the first few seconds of this story reveal cracks in his life that fans have ignored for years. Betrayals behind closed doors, career pressures disguised as success, emotional wounds he kept buried from the public, and a personal downfall that no blockbuster movie could ever hide. Before we dive deeper into these disturbing revelations, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because your subscription is not just a formality. It's what tells YouTube that this video matters, that this story deserves to be shown to more people, and that our community of truth seekers is worth growing. When you subscribe, you're helping the algorithm recognize that stories like this should not be silenced. And trust me, you're going to want to stay until the very end, because the final revelation about Jason Momoa's emotional breaking point is something even his most loyal fans never saw coming. This is not just another celebrity drama. It's a painful journey of fame, loss, and silent suffering. So as you watch, keep your mind open, question everything you thought you knew, and let yourself feel the weight of each moment. And don't forget to comment below telling me what surprised you the most, because I guarantee at least one part of this story will leave you shocked. Stay with me, because the truth behind Jason Momoa's tragedy only gets darker, and the last revelation will leave you absolutely stunned. Jason Momoa was born on August 1st, 1979, in Honolulu, Hawaii, and raised by his mother in Iowa after his parents separated, a contrast of worlds that shaped both his identity and his resilience. Growing up far from the beaches of Hawaii, he often felt disconnected, struggling to define who he was between two cultures, and this search for belonging would later become a driving force behind his determined personality. When he returned to Hawaii as a young adult, he reconnected with his roots, discovering not only the culture he had been missing, but also the confidence that would carry him into the entertainment industry. Before fame, he worked odd jobs, including being a surf shop worker and a model. And although he won a modeling award in 1999, success didn't come easily. He faced years of rejection, financial instability, and personal doubts. His first breakthrough came when he landed a role on Baywatch Hawaii. Yet instead of opening doors, it typecast him, forcing him to fight even harder to be taken seriously. This battle continued until his powerful portrayal of Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones changed everything, proving his ability to embody strength, vulnerability, and intensity. But behind the scenes, Momoa carried scars. The pressure of sudden fame, the trauma of a brutal 2008 attack that left his face permanently marked, and the emotional strain of balancing his rising career with his deep devotion to family. His journey from a restless young man searching for identity to a global icon was built through perseverance, cultural pride, and constant reinvention. Despite playing fierce warriors, his real-life story is one of tenderness, loyalty, and relentless determination to honor his roots while carving his own path. Today, Jason Momoa stands not only as an actor, but as a symbol of how resilience can turn hardship into purpose, transforming a complicated past into a legacy of strength and authenticity. 1. The silent collapse of his long-term marriage. The silent collapse of Jason Momoa's long-term marriage is one of the most heartbreaking chapters of his life, not because it exploded in public scandal, but because it quietly unraveled behind closed doors while the world continued to see them as an unbreakable couple. For years, Jason and Lisa Bonet were admired as a powerful, spiritual, deeply connected pair, the kind of relationship people believed was immune to Hollywood chaos. But what most people never realized is that their emotional distance had been growing slowly, almost invisibly, built from unspoken expectations, personal evolutions, and life pressures that neither of them fully knew how to navigate. Jason's career exploded at a speed that changed their lifestyle, rhythm, and even their communication. While he traveled constantly for months at a time, filming intense projects across the world, Lisa leaned into a quieter life focused on home, creativity, and stillness. These opposite directions did not create conflict at first, but they began to create space that kept widening without either of them noticing until it was almost impossible to bridge. Jason, with his free-spirited energy and deep love for adventure, grew into a person whose life was dominated by movement, sets, public events, and physical demands. Lisa, on the other hand, grew in a direction more rooted in introspection, simplicity, and spiritual calm. The love was still there, but the alignment wasn't. Their emotional languages changed, their priorities shifted, and the sense of partnership that once felt effortless slowly became work. Work that both feared might become heavier than their happiness. When they finally announced their separation, it wasn't anger or betrayal that ended things, but the bittersweet realization that they had evolved into two different people trying to hold on to a version of themselves that no longer existed. For Jason, the heartbreak came not only from losing the woman he had admired since childhood, but also from losing the familiar stability that shaped his identity as a father and partner. The collapse was silent, gentle, and deeply painful, a reminder that sometimes relationships don't break. They simply fade, leaving behind love, respect, and a quiet ache that time can soften but not erase. 2. The financial pressure hidden behind stardom. The financial pressure hidden behind Jason Momoa's stardom is one of the most surprising and least discussed aspects of his journey, because people naturally assume that fame automatically means endless wealth. But in Momoa's case, the reality was far more complicated, especially during the transitional years before he became a household name. Even after appearing in major productions, Jason often found himself in unstable financial situations, largely because the entertainment industry pays inconsistently, and roles that look huge on screen don't always come with enormous paychecks. When Game of Thrones ended for his character, many believed he was set for life, but he actually faced a period where money was tight, opportunities were uncertain, and a lifestyle required to maintain his career, travel, training, housing near filming locations, drained his savings faster than most fans would ever imagine. With a family to support, Jason felt an enormous pressure to secure roles quickly, sometimes accepting projects not because they inspired him, but because the bills kept rising and the financial cushion he was supposed to have simply didn't exist. At one point, he openly shared that he struggled to pay basic household expenses and felt the weight of trying to stay afloat while still being perceived as a successful Hollywood figure. This financial tension also affected his mental well-being, because the image of strength and stability he showed the world did not match the private stress he carried every day. He worried about long gaps between roles, about whether he would be able to provide the life he wanted for his children, and about the fear that Hollywood might move on to the next rising star before he had the chance to fully secure his future. The irony is that the same audiences who admired his larger-than-life characters had no idea he was dealing with very real, very human pressures behind the scenes. It wasn't until Aquaman turned into a massive global hit that his financial life finally stabilized, giving him the breathing room he had been chasing for years. But even today, the memory of those struggles stays with him, shaping the way he approaches work and reminding him that fame may shine on the outside, but it rarely reflects the full truth hiding beneath the surface. 3. The physical toll of a warrior image. The physical toll of maintaining a warrior image has been one of the most exhausting and painful realities of Jason Momoa's career, even though it's something most fans never truly see. Because he is known for portraying powerful, rugged, larger-than-life characters, the world automatically assumes that his body is built for invincibility. But behind that intimidating physique lies years of accumulated injuries, chronic pain, and constant pressure to push himself far beyond what is healthy. From Game of Thrones to Aquaman and every intense action role in between, Jason's work demands extreme training routines, brutal fight choreography, and dangerous stunts that take a serious toll on muscles, joints, and bones. Over the years, he has suffered multiple on-set accidents, including serious cuts, torn ligaments, and muscle strains that never fully healed. One of his most well-known injuries came during the filming of Aquaman, when he damaged his knee so badly that he required surgery, But instead of slowing down, he continued shooting through the pain because production deadlines left him no choice. What makes this even more difficult is the expectation that he must always look strong, lean, and imposing, which forces him to maintain intense diets, harsh training sessions, and constant physical discipline even when his body is screaming for rest. The audience sees the heroic warrior, but they don't see the nights he can barely sleep because of back pain, or the mornings he wakes up stiff and sore from years of pushing himself past his limits. He has openly admitted that being trapped inside the tough guy image can be suffocating because it leaves no room for vulnerability or physical weakness. And as he gets older, the consequences of these injuries become more noticeable, turning simple movements into challenges and making recovery slower each time. Yet Jason continues to endure, not out of pride, but out of love for his craft and a desire to give fans the best version of every character he plays. Still, the truth is clear. Behind the armor, tattoos, and warrior spirit is a man whose body has paid a heavy price for the roles that made him famous, carrying pain that audiences will never truly understand. 4. The battle with Hollywood typecasting. The battle with Hollywood typecasting has been one of the most frustrating and quietly painful struggles in Jason Momoa's career, because even though he is admired for his intense, powerful roles, those same roles have trapped him in a box that he never asked to be placed in. After his breakout performance as Khal Drogo, the industry immediately labeled him as the ferocious warrior, the silent brute, or the muscular action hero, and from that moment on, casting directors seemed unable or unwilling to see anything beyond that image. No matter how much talent he showed, or how deeply he wanted to challenge himself creatively, the opportunities he received were almost always variations of the same archetype. This created a quiet internal conflict for Jason, because while he was grateful for the roles that boosted his career, he also felt limited, as if Hollywood only valued his physical presence and not his emotional range or artistic depth. He has always been passionate about storytelling, writing, directing, and exploring sensitive, dramatic characters. Yet those opportunities rarely came his way simply because he didn't fit the traditional mold of what Hollywood considers a serious actor. Studios often overlooked him for roles that required vulnerability or intellectual complexity, choosing instead to cast him in parts that emphasize strength over substance. This constant pattern made him question whether people genuinely saw his potential or if they only saw his physique, and that doubt slowly became one of the burdens of fame. Even when he tried to break the cycle by taking on smaller, more artistic projects, the industry continued pushing him back toward familiar roles, reinforcing a stereotype that felt increasingly suffocating as he matured. The challenge of proving himself, again and again, became exhausting, especially when he was aware of how much more he had to offer. And as he approached his mid-40s, the fear that he might be permanently locked into this narrow character type grew stronger, raising concerns about longevity and creative fulfillment. Through it all, Jason has remained patient, determined, and hopeful, constantly searching for ways to show the world that he is more than a warrior, more than a muscular figure, and more than the expectations Hollywood keeps placing on him. But the battle with typecasting continues to be one of the most persistent and emotionally draining obstacles in his journey. 5. The emotional weight of constant public expectations. The emotional weight of constant public expectations has become one of the heaviest burdens Jason Momoa carries, even though it's something most fans rarely consider because they only see the confident, larger-than-life figure he portrays on screen. Ever since he became a global symbol of strength, charisma, and rugged masculinity, the world has unconsciously placed him on a pedestal, expecting him to always be fearless, always be joyful, always be powerful, and never show weakness. But behind that public mask is a man who feels the pressure of millions of eyes watching his every move, judging his body, his choices, his relationships, and even the way he expresses emotion. The image of Jason Momoa, the warrior, is so deeply ingrained in people's minds that it leaves almost no space for Jason Momoa, the human being, and that imbalance slowly creates emotional exhaustion. He often feels trapped in a role he didn't fully choose, a role that requires him to be strong even when he is tired, to smile even when he is hurting, and to meet expectations that no real person could ever sustain. Every time he gains or loses weight for a role, people comment. Every time he shows vulnerability in an interview, headlines spin it into drama. Every time he appears in public without the usual energy or charm, fans assume something is wrong. This constant surveillance drains him because he wants to be authentic but fears disappointing the audience who admires him. On top of that, he feels responsible for inspiring others, especially young fans who see him as a hero, and carrying that responsibility adds even more pressure to live up to an idealized version of himself. As he gets older, the expectations only grow heavier because people want him to remain the unstoppable, ageless figure they've come to know, forgetting that he, too, faces self-doubt, fatigue, and emotional struggles. All of this builds into a quiet internal conflict. The desire to be seen for who he truly is, balanced against the fear that revealing too much vulnerability could break the illusion that made him famous. And while Jason handles these expectations with grace and humor, the truth is that the emotional weight behind his public image is far greater than most people realize, reminding us that even the strongest-looking individuals can carry invisible burdens that shape their lives in deeply personal ways. 6. The deep fear of losing cultural connection. The deep fear of losing cultural connection has been one of the most personal and emotional struggles in Jason Momoa's life, because his identity has always been rooted in the heritage, traditions, and spirit of his Hawaiian culture. For him, being Hawaiian is not just a birthplace. It is a source of strength, belonging, and emotional grounding. Yet the demands of Hollywood, the constant travel, and the pressure to maintain a global career have slowly pulled him away from the daily rituals, community presence, and cultural practices that shaped him. As his fame grew, so did the distance between the life he dreamed of and the one he now lives, and this distance created a quiet, persistent fear that he might one day wake up feeling disconnected from the very roots that made him who he is. While he proudly represents his culture in interviews, films, and public appearances, he knows that representing something from afar is not the same as living it. He misses the simplicity of being surrounded by family, the comfort of speaking in familiar rhythms, the spiritual practices of his homeland, and the sense of unity that comes from being part of a community that moves and breathes as one. Hollywood, for all its opportunity, is also isolating, surrounded by lights, cameras, and people who admire your image but may not understand your heart. Jason often worries that his children, growing up in a very different environment, may not fully experience the cultural richness he grew up with. This fear pushes him to bring them home whenever possible, to teach them traditions, values, and a deep respect for nature and ancestry that defines Hawaiian culture. But no matter how hard he tries, he cannot escape the reality that time away from home always creates emotional distance. The world sees him as Aquaman or as a Hollywood star, but he still sees himself as a kid from Hawaii trying to hold on to the identity he cherishes. And as he gets older, the urgency to reconnect grows stronger because he knows that culture is not something you can store away and revisit whenever convenient. It is something you must live, breathe, and nurture. This inner conflict between career demands and cultural loyalty has created one of the most profound pains of his adult life. A constant reminder that the price of success can sometimes be the slow fading of the things that matter most. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me through Jason Momoa's powerful and deeply human journey. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of his story surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice makes this community stronger. And before you go, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on all notifications. Your support tells YouTube that these stories matter, that they deserve to reach more people, and that you want to keep exploring the truth behind the lives of the icons we admire. Stay tuned, because the next video will reveal another story that will leave you absolutely speechless.